Okay, so we have a new episode of Legends and Leaders, and today it's great to have Taylor here. Taylor, you're somebody that has saw the opportunity for a new product category and seized on that and built a brand around it that has become so widespread and really impacted the world. And what you did with Stance was incredible, and now what you're trying to do in the
Thank
manufacturing
you.
space is it's unique, and you're enabling new types of high quality products to be made at the highest standards for the environment. You're giving different people opportunities to work that maybe you wouldn't have had that elsewhere. So I'm excited to get into your story and to have you here.
Hey, thanks, Ben. Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. So where did your passion for apparel kind of come from? Was that something you always had as a kid? And also the business side of things, did you always want to be entrepreneurial?
No, actually, I didn't have much passion towards apparel growing up at all. I guess I was a fan of brands. Grew up in Southern California, where action sports, was thriving, especially in the
Mhm.
'90s. And so I had a passion towards the activities, but not necessarily the apparel itself. My venture into socks was actually one that was highly calculated.
Mhm.
And while I was a sock guy, I love good socks. I've always had favorite pair of socks ever since I was a kid. I didn't come to the conclusion that I wanted to get into socks until after I'd done a thorough market analysis.
Mhm.
And if you want me to jump into that, I can.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. Yeah. So I think success is largely about seeing something that others don't. And in my journey to build this business, I've learned that identifying and exploiting white space, and that's those like unmet, underserved areas in the market, is like half the battle. And spotting those opportunities is something that's learnable. I mean, it is an art, but a big part of it is just like structuring um, or creating a methodology that you follow to determine whether or not there actually are underserved consumers, or there is area to play in that nobody else is really touching. And so for me, so I started my first business actually in college, and that business was on the verge of bankruptcy in 2008 when we had that recession. And I sort of I took a step back at that point, and I began to assess what it was that I had done wrong, and what were the sort of key variables that I learned that were important for me to both assess and then to uh, you know to follow as I built something new. And so I created a matrix with 8 different variables that I felt like were the most important for a measurement. And it was things like, you know, um, things that are qualitative as well as quantitative. Of course, put it all into like a Likert scale, 1 to 5. But things like, does this market have a lack of innovation? Um, does this opportunity have scale? Sort of what is the potential market size? And what would my margins be, theoretically? Um, what's the flywheel or sort of the consumption wheel with the customer? I mean, how often are they interacting with this product? I wanted to go for something that was habitual, because I felt like getting into something that could be habitual creates like salience in the consumer's mind, right? Like, a remembrance, a call to remember that product when they're thinking about a specific activity or thing that they're doing. And then e-commerce friendly, high SKU productivity, all these other variables. Essentially, I had 8 of them. And I would walk the aisles of Target and Nordstrom and other department stores, and you sort of just plot, okay, where are all of these categories landing in my matrix? And socks just kept coming to the top. And that seems like super weird, right? But I guess why I thought it was so interesting was because really the sock is the beginning of your footwear experience. It's before the shoe, right? But like the market was so commoditized, and nobody put that much of an emphasis on the fit and feel of the product. But I identified if that product fails, it's a massive inconvenience, and it can be like potentially very uncomfortable, right? Like think like a sock like quitting on you, right? The elastic's not good, or like a no show where the heel falls down, or a hole you get in your sock that you can feel, right? So there was this like there was I think an opportunity at the consumer level to create a better product that would make them feel better, that could potentially even increase their ability to perform on and off the court, right, or on and off the track. And then like I started going into the retailers that I knew and loved, like the Jack's Surf and Sports of the world down here in Southern California. I realized that there was like 60 pairs of shoes on a wall, and then a basket with 3 or 4 pairs of jacquarded socks. And I thought, gosh, like there's white space, I think, in the mind of the consumer, and there's white space here in retail. And I think if I make this product the right way, I package it the right way, I create the right display, that I could actually create a decent return on a per square foot basis. And I knew that I had to create that value proposition to be able to scale rapidly, right? Like I had to figure out in the end, how am I going to get this product out into market in a way that creates a very high 4-wall contribution for my retailers? Because I felt at that time like where you sold was almost as important as what you sold. And I wanted to get into like the top, fashion boutiques and, streetwear accounts, action sports accounts. And really quickly, I learned that, this product offering could actually perform above any others, specifically in the holiday season. But even in the summertime, it was above almost any other article of apparel. And, and I think that venture into wholesale was really meaningful because it got me so much cheap awareness. It was like I had a billboard in the best accounts around the nation, and then that fueled my DTC business. And also because it was sort of an organic in-person interaction with the brand, we created a lot of loyalty and a lot of interest that became quite permanent with the consumer versus a DTC play, which everybody at the time when we started Stance was like, go heavy into DTC. Everything should be DTC, right? Potential margins are huge in DTC. But I found that going into wholesale first was a really, really a big part of, the magic that we were able to create. And, when I started Stance, I thought, okay, this could be a $50 million company. And that satisfied my financial desires. But I think because, we had done all the homework in advance, and also we linked up with the right people, the right investors that would give us the fuel to scale, we were able to far surpass that number in the first few years. And, I think like the market's growing at maybe 8% per year now, but at the time it was about 4%. So I think Stance definitely made a dent in the hosiery market, sort of elevated the desirability of good knitwear. And then in 2018, we fundraised at over 400 million. And I decided that at that point, I wanted to go into a larger market and try to challenge even like deeper orthodoxies and even more archaic thinking. And that's why I went into manufacturing, which, textile and clothing manufacturing represents $1 trillion industry. It's absolutely ginormous. But I saw so much waste, and I saw so many inefficiencies. And I thought that if I could build something that was going to challenge the status quo, that I'd be able to create product that's best in class, align my needs with the needs of the community, and do something really meaningful. I became obsessed with manufacturing because of what it does for societies. If you look at it, only 12% of the jobs in America are manufacturing jobs, but they create like 60% of the other jobs in America downstream, right? Because if you manufacture something, you need to sell it. You need to service it. You need to deliver it, right? And so it creates so many more jobs. And I just became quite obsessed with Henry Ford and what he did by bringing in all these like socialisms into his capitalistic enterprise, and that's actually fueled a lot of his competitive advantages. And I thought, hey, if I build the right infrastructure and align my needs with the needs of the planet, and the needs of my people, that I might be able to attract the best possible talent and get the support of the government and other and the community to do something that nobody else has done in my space. And so my first build was this 300,000 square foot facility in Zhejiang, China. And my objective there was to prove that eco-responsibility and profitability can coexist. Actually, further than that, that the eco-responsibility can propel profitability to new levels. And so I built it with like 400 wells on the property, pumping groundwater throughout, lowering all of my energy costs, obviously using solar as the primary feedstock into my into the machines. And then, there's a basketball court, a gym, classrooms, cantina, art gallery, right? I wanted to build it in a way where people were excited to go to work. And the social calling there in China was like, we want to unlock individuals' personality, their individuality. We wanted to get them involved in the product creation process, which was so different than how businesses treated Chinese workers. And the result was like tons of new IP, working with the best possible brands. While it was a heavy lift initially, because I probably spent 3 times the amount per square foot, and this is all like the most eco-friendly materials on the planet, and then the building is built to last too. It's primarily steel. But with energy prices the way they've gone now, I'm looking back and like, I made all the right investments. And I think there's sort of this really cool intersection between best in class product, a social cause, and environmental responsibility that it's like future proofs your business. And I've taken that same mentality as I've expanded into other countries. And my big project right now is here in California. And it's like my approach to business is like this. It's kind of like this philosophy that says that like revolves around identifying and rectifying backward thinking, right? And I became enthralled with like the prison system for a variety of reasons, but I began to like understand the epidemic that we have here, which is incarceration, and how bad it is for families, how bad it is for society, how bad it is for us as taxpayers. I've been thinking like, what if I like challenged, the thinking around employing ex-incarcerated individuals, and, I was able to create an environment that stopped recidivism or lowered it as much as possible. What could that do for America? What could that do for California? What could that do for my community? And then what could that do for my profitability? And I came up with this hypothesis that if I created the right environment, had the right pay, therapy, um, you know, uh, meditation and yoga and all these different aspects that we felt like were important to sort of rebuild one's life, would I be able to increase the retention of my employment base and therefore lower my cost structure and create a competitive advantage in that regard? And this group of employees has like a 35% unemployment rate. So my theory is like, they're going to stay. If I'm like best in class, they're not going to just stay, for a year or two. They're going to stay forever. And that's what we've proven here, which is really freaking cool. It's the most exciting thing I think I've ever done. We have a couple dozen women specifically that we've hired from the incarceration system. And most of those women ended up there for entrepreneurial reasons. They had a baby daddy wasn't paying the bills, so they sold themselves or they sold drugs. And the stories you'll hear are absolutely heart-wrenching. Most of them come out and they're homeless. 80% of women get out of the system, they have no support system at all. whereas it's the inverse for men. They have a very low risk profile as well, which is why we're predominantly focusing on women. But women are also amazing at developing community, have very high social skills. And we've, over the past 2 years, proven a 0% recidivism versus 50%. Right. So nobody's going back. And it shows you, like, give somebody a second chance. You trust somebody enough, give them a second chance, then they're going to be devoted. They're going to be happy. They're going to work hard. They're going to produce. And as like a ramification of this, a result of what we've done, I've realized that the ideas that this disadvantaged community has come up with are some of the most powerful ideas I've ever had in my innovation process, right? Because like a small disadvantage to us, right, or inconvenience could be huge to them. And where we're heading is actually on the product side is actually developing footwear out of socks, so you don't need socks, because we identified that this group of women that we had hired hated socks. They're like, I gotta go buy socks, which are expensive. I gotta wait for my kid to put on the sock before they leave for school, and catch their bus. And oftentimes I have to catch a bus, and it's just like this pain in the butt, especially with young kids putting on socks, right? But then I gotta wash them in a laundromat. I gotta pair them. I gotta fold them up and put them in a drawer. And that whole process is very time intensive and capital intensive. So like, why isn't there better footwear out there that doesn't require a sock, but still has moisture wicking, antimicrobial, thermoregulation, other technological benefits? So he started creating things where it's very basic in the beginning, right? Like casted, this is casted, this isn't some sort of a print, but a TPU outsole. You could fold this thing down. You can take this thing to the gym. You could go through the airport. You can even go and play some performance sports in these things, and they're super comfortable. And may not offer the same protection as some of the other products that we developed. But that sort of thinking, right? It's like, what is sock and why sock? And if I could be part of removing socks from the market, that would give me a great sense of satisfaction. Like the thing I built everything on. If I could be like, don't wear socks anymore, because like we have the best freaking footwear. This is just a small example, but I do think there's a lot of innovation here that I could talk about separately. Then I'm doing something. Then I'm challenging this common sense thing, which is all about my philosophy, business philosophy in general, and I'm lowering the environmental impact, which I think is significant. And I'm helping somebody, right? So that's what I'm doing, and I have big ambitions right now on a build here. I'm actually working with the state. I'm working with San Diego County on this like farm school. And by school, I mean like it's more of like a daycare, right? Elementary school, a charter school, and daycare. And it's mini homes and it's commercialization. And I'm using the agricultural waste to then dye the product. We have obviously a great food source there, and then the biggest need for this community is housing. There's almost zero low income housing, which is why most of these people were homeless before we hired them. That's my big thing I'm focusing on now. And then we're going to be creating a direct consumer pipeline there that I think will challenge the consumer's relationship with footwear, sort of how they interact with it, how they wear it, and then how they pay for it, and then the end, how do they dispose of it? That's my big like opus that I think could be really really interesting. But taking it back, sorry, I know I went like little grandiose there, but taking it back, like I think it's this like for all those entrepreneurs out there that are looking to start a business, take your time and assess outdated norms. Like identify archaic thinking and challenge it, right? Try to find common sense that isn't all that common. And experiment. And sometimes it's a game changer, but it's always a step towards some sort of better business practice. And I've never, ever met anybody that's gone into entrepreneurship to change something, to make something better, that hasn't, that's ever regretted it, let's just say, even if they weren't successful commercially. So that's all I have to say about that, Ben.
Yeah.
What else you got for me, man? Sorry, that was like 25 minutes of me
That's
just
okay.
going.
Yeah. So, with what you're trying to do with this factory, Taylor, um, how do you think that you can really demonstrate to corporations that maybe think, oh, well, if I do something environmentally friendly, that maybe that's not as financially beneficial. Do you think that's just them working with you and seeing, or just seeing other company the results that maybe the costs are lower here and the product lasts longer and there's higher consumer satisfaction? Like, what do you think it's going to take for many companies to adopt a manufacturing process like yours that can really save them?
I think it's just going to be them doing their homework because energy is cheap when you have some capital you can throw into solar. It's even cheaper when you have more capital you can throw into geothermal. Like the returns on investment in Southern California, full returns, like 30 months. When you think about it, annualized, that's a crazy return on investment. So, like, I try to look at business through a first principles lens, where it's like, okay, let's just say there's four things that I need to solve here. It's real estate, energy, labor, raw materials. Okay. Energy just makes perfect sense to go eco because um, your 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 costs are gonna be dramatically lower. So why the heck would you raise a little bit more money, even if you're paying 6%, 7%? You're getting a 25% return on investment. Now I understand that like sometimes access to capital is challenging, especially at the beginning. So you find great investors that are aligned with this. And you want to find investors who have long money, not short money, right? So not VCs that have a 7 month, deal. The cheapest money is going to be banks, and then it's going to be probably family offices that could be strategic investors, and then real estate. It's like, okay, how do I acquire land at the lowest possible price? For me, it just so happens that agricultural land here in California is one quarter the price of industrial land. Well, hey, why do I have a farm? It's not just because I want to feed people and I want to use the byproduct for dyeing. I want to get agricultural land. I want to build on it at quarter of the price, right? So you see where everything can intersect. And then what you do is you work with the city who's like, hey, this is feeding people. It's creating great jobs. It's keeping people out of prison. It's safe for kids. We're going to help you rezone this thing into multi-use. All of a sudden, your property is 3 times as valuable and you collateralize it, 70% of the value, and you further your build. But the way I'm looking at real estate is not only the land, but how we build. Well, all you need is a Quonset hut. All you need is an airplane hangar, essentially, which costs $30 a square foot versus some big, massive, eco detrimental 4 wall concrete, build. So I look at that. I'm like, okay, my cost now is cheaper than Turkey, where I have a plant, in electricity. It's cheaper than China in building. What about raw materials then? And what about the social thing? What about the labor costs? Well, if my labor, if I can maintain a 90% retention versus the market, which is 30% in my industry, second to only truck driving, then I get 50% gain per year on all of the direct costs that I have for training because I have a very long learning curve for this thing, right? So I'm doing these calculations and I'm looking, okay, what are the subsidies that the state can provide? And then I can apply to all of the different things that the employees need, the cultural things, the therapies, the medication, the legal support, right? All of those things. And I pencil all of it out to show I'm actually more productive on a per hour basis than I am in China. So, it's like there's a way to look at every single component and break it down to its basic principle, find where there's arbitrage and capture the arbitrage. And you'll see it across the board with some of the most successful entrepreneurs. It's like how Elon was able to create a rocket that was like, a quarter of the price. The Russians were selling it to him, right? His labor cost is much higher here, but he broke it down all the way to the basic raw material, built it up again, and realized there were so many inefficiencies that were just accepted in the industry because people have been doing that way for a long time, and he challenged it and obviously made a very successful business out of it. I feel like the same thing, although my, business is only circular knit. It's very small industry. But where I feel the most gratification, I'll tell you, let me just tell you real quick. Yesterday, we had Friendsgiving at the factory, and everybody brought potluck. And we went around the room and we shared something that we were grateful for. And by like the second share, everybody's crying. It's like, I was abused. I was gang raped. I had a boyfriend who lit my house on fire. I was living out of my car before I came here, and then it went how grateful they were for all these different things. And the thing that just resonated across the board was the second chance. How grateful I am that I got this second chance to be here. And it was I never felt the feeling I felt yesterday in business. I've maybe got close, we had Stance was a really fun brand. I mean, it still is, but it used to be really fun, hanging out with celebrities and doing really interesting things. And we had fun moments. The gratification you receive from bettering somebody's life through capitalism, and not only their lives, but the lives of their kids and family, while proving and challenging stigmas that we all hold that incorporate prejudice and backward thinking, is so immensely gratifying. You just have to experience it yourself. In fact, I would love to take you around in this factory so you can meet all the people that we work with. But this is not like this isn't even like factory employment anymore. Now my controller is just as impacted. Salespeople are just as impacted. My head of HR was a drug dealer. I mean, people be like, that's crazy. I've never found people so trustworthy. I know that sounds nuts, but when you, I believe you've done something, Ben, where you could have been arrested in jail. I sure as hell have. And I think most of these people they had bad luck, and you give them that chance when nobody else gives it to them, and they are devoted and they will never screw up for you, and it becomes this tight community where everybody bonds and helps each other. And I'm creating something beautiful. And I don't even think about the financial side of it. I build it the right way from the beginning, and then it goes. And there's this sort of natural attraction, universe protects you, helps you, finds these opportunities for you when you're doing what's right by your people and by the planet. And I'm not trying to get on any sort of fucking soapbox here. Because in the end, in business, of course, we want to create profit. But if you prioritize the things that are more important, I think, than profit, the profit just comes. I know that maybe sounds like too hippie, or maybe not, but it feels like it's a natural law of physics or something.
I just have a couple of questions on the Stance stuff. So
Yeah.
there was this point where you guys did this deal where the logo started appearing on the socks. It was a really new type of deal that was done. It was great brand exposure. I mean, how much of an impact did that have when you had that with the NBA? I think you also did a deal with the MLB. Was it just so much of an impact to the bottom line of the company? What did it really do for you guys?
Well, one of the best decisions we made day one was to put the logo on the ankle. Right? And we actually got a design patent for anything circular permanently affixed to the ankle or the ankle area, I think, within 5 centimeters. Pretty incredible, right? That was like the real estate. Anybody who, was taking that power position and lifting their leg in a meeting, ready to make a decision, or anybody who was performing and moving, you'd see that logo, it'd hit you. Now, I will say that I wish that we had incorporated a word mark into the logo somehow, and that became the identifier around the ankle. Because we actually didn't get much credit for the MLB or NBA. We still have MLB. If we would have put the Stance word mark in there and made it legible, I think that would have created a lot more salience, a lot more memory, where we actually found the highest impression value and the greatest salience and brand recognition was not in the NBA fan, not in the individual that was actively going to games. It was with the individuals who were playing NBA 2K, because there you saw Stance, right? And the logo was much larger too. And that deal was nothing in terms of comparing, the cost to the NBA deal itself. I mean, maybe we wouldn't have gotten it if we weren't on court.
Mm-hmm.
But what it did for us was it cemented us as a performance company. We weren't getting credit for the product innovation until we had those products on the feet of athletes. And when I think about apparel or footwear, right? Not even when I think about it. If you look at market sizes, if you look at the difference between the largest performance footwear company in the world versus the largest lifestyle footwear company in the world, it's a 10-to-1 ratio, right? Nike versus Crocs. Okay. You get credit for performance. You can make lifestyle product all day long and people will wear it. You can't make lifestyle product and then suddenly go into performance like an Allbirds did, right? Similar to, you can't start with apparel and then get into footwear. You always start with start with footwear and then get into apparel. There's sort of these like natural things that consumers can expect. Just like you can't go low, start low and then go high. You always start high and then go low. It's the same sort of idea. But obviously, there's a lot more barriers of entry to excelling in performance. You need to invest more in athletes who are expensive because obviously the market, there's so much market power that's been created by these individuals. So that's what it did for us. It gave us like now a platform to leverage performance and innovation and all this like utility value. And so we developed that fresh tech technology, which is all the, the moisture wicking and the cooling and all that. And then allowed us to expand into apparel and other things, which created, really good growth rate. But it wasn't about the specific NBA sock sales. It was a sort of indirect relationship, which you'll find oftentimes, right, in business, to the performance products in general and elevating the brand equity that we created.
So you mentioned earlier that like you were confident based on there were certain areas of criteria you thought that this made sense. You went to stores, you thought that socks made sense. But in terms of like the premium quality sock and a premium price point for certain like socks, I mean, did you like where did the backing for that come from? Because some of the socks you had, like I don't think there were socks in this category targeted to this audience at that type of price point yet.
There weren't. Yeah, the Nike Elite hadn't even come out yet. When Nike Elite came out, they were offering a $12 sock. Now that sock, I think they still have the Hyper Elite, and it's like 20, right, or 24. But I remember when they came out and they pitched it to Foot Locker was like, we can't sell a $12 sock. And that was like 2 years after us already having proven it in action sports, where you would argue that consumer probably has less disposable income than the hardcore basketball enthusiast. But yeah, it was like, hey, the average sock sells for $5. Let's put this on the feet of people and then determine what the willingness to pay is. So we made the fit perfect. We invested in the right yarns, the right lycras. We started putting it on people's feet, and they'd be like, "I'd pay $10 for this. I've never felt socks like this." Right? So it was not a cost plus model. It was strictly like, "Hey, what is this experience worth?" And I think that brands that set themselves up with a cost plus model need to up their sophistication a little bit. And they need to like start communicating and working with the consumer. That's where you find the most power in your merchandising strategies. So I don't even remember what your question was, but I hope I answered it with those things. What else was it?
Yeah, it was just about the price point. Like, how did you like kind of confirm that people would pay the premium that they were paying for the socks when there was nothing in the market?
Yeah. And then, what I would say about that too is like, you have to like the best information is going to come from the cash wrap, not from me and you talking about it, or working in a focus group. But it's like the natural environment and seeing people vote with their wallet, right? Like that, like when we launched Fresh Tech, we were getting data back. The consumer was like, we'd spend $25 on that. We took it to market, and the real willingness to pay when we got into the store was 15, which is still great. But you see, it's the same thing with anything. So let's talk about environmental. You go and you ask people, are they willing to pay more for, environmental products or even made in USA? They're all going to say yes. And sometimes it's 20, 30% more. But then you put it out there, and it's really like they're only going to buy it if there's price parity between it and another brand that doesn't have that. You know what I mean? So consumer psychology is really fascinating, but the best information comes from actually selling it and then getting that feedback from them, and then
Mm,
watching it. Like I've watched videos in retail, hours, no, maybe hundreds of hours, right? And how the consumer interacts with the product. And you'll see these like visceral differences between different demographics. Like I'll give you one, like men and women. You want to
mm,
double expose, even triple expose your product for women because women gather, right? They like to touch and to view and to like interact with things over and over again before they make the decision. Whereas men
huh,
like to hunt. So men, you go to very specific, visible location for them, one stop for the products. You don't need to double expose. They're in and they're out. And then we started realizing like we got too complicated with the merchandise. We had too much choice. There was this paradox of choice creeping in because there were too many styles. And we realized that like a lot of men actually wouldn't buy crazy socks unless they were with their significant other who approved of the crazy socks, right? So then we were like sort of messaging to her to bring her in, and then she became our customer, whereas the man became the consumer. So we started bifurcating them, right? Talking to the male in our marketing with our product design, and then we were talking to the female with the POP and and other things. We sort of looked at it through two different lenses, and that led to very powerful messaging, great returns on investment with our marketing, specifically in store.
So you mentioned like that the wholesale model made sense initially, and people were pushing you direct to consumer, but you said we can kind of get this into different places through the wholesale model. I mean, eventually you went and created your own stores. And I mean, how much of an impact was it having your own stores? I mean, was it so significant? Did the prestige of the stores make the overall brand sales better? Like, what did it really do
Yeah.
for you?
Yeah. So what we realized early on was that if we had a beautiful display, that we would increase our sell through by 40%. And
Mm,
the retailer would be willing to take a lot more stock as well. And so, we started like amplifying that into from a rack, one rack with two sides to four sides. Then it became shop and shop. Then it became retail. I don't think Stance, and by the way, right, I own Stance China. I bought it from my partners. I make 80% of the products, and I'm really tight with the complete leadership team. But I'm not in an operating role. I will say that I think that there's gaps in their retail strategy. I think they went too large with their footprint. I feel like you can, when you go into retail, investment costs are really high. Most of those investment costs you're not going to see back, and I think it's very important to figure out, what investments are worth it and why, and that includes obviously how many square feet, but also all the fixtures and builds and all of that. And you'll find if you test appropriately going into it, then you can have a very stable growth model that delivers a good return on investment year in year out. And Stance right now, I think, has 24 stores here. We have about 25 in China as well that we run. And my footprint is like between 500 and 750 square feet. The footprints here are somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000 typically. But we found product market fit through testing. And one thing I will say, and this isn't I hope this doesn't come off as a dig, but entrepreneurship is, I believe it's the lifeblood of industry. It's the entrepreneur who's like fighting the complacency, the entropy, all of that. Big business is optimization. It's very methodical. I'm not like sort of disparaging being methodical. I'm just saying like it's more about incremental optimization. When you bring in people from the outside who have a corporate mindset into your brand, you have to make sure that they have the ability to take risks, and that they're going to do new things with you, sort of be an entrepreneur, rather than just bring in the old thinking from a Nike or from a Lululemon or whatever. Because the worst hires I've ever made have been institutional hires who are very expensive, VP level type people at publicly traded companies that come in and they try to Nikeify you, or they try to Luluify you. And I say that with all due respect because these are customers of mine and I love those companies. But I think that you have to be really careful bringing in corporate mindsets and sort of these practices that other people have experienced, because they're not going to challenge the common sense the way that the entrepreneur will challenge common sense. And that's something you have to develop within your company. If you develop that culture, the dividends are ginormous. If you can give a certain comfort or security to the individual, it allows them to take risks and then celebrate the risk and celebrate the failure or success, whatever that end result is, then I think you've developed a culture that's going to be quite formidable. You'll find competitive advantages, weekly, monthly, maybe, big things that allow you to be able to further your scalability and capture new consumers that you thought were unattainable.
Look, Taylor, that's all the questions that I had. I appreciate you coming on here. I think the story you have is great. The ability that you have to take risks is unique. I mean, especially now with this factory that you're building out, and it's something that you're creating like a new way of really producing things that are environmentally friendly, but also you're building something to last, something that can be an industry standard, and what you're doing to people that were incarcerated as well, and giving them a second life and a second opportunity. I think that's really great to develop a system around that can be scaled to many other people based on the model that you have. So I appreciate you sharing it and coming on, and I look forward to your future success.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate that. Just one last thought. I actually don't have a high risk tolerance. People who are around me assume that I'm like a gambler. I hate gambling. Everything I do has been modeled out. It's a very basic arithmetic, and so I don't want people to perceive me as somebody who's been able to do something interesting because I have a high risk tolerance. Because quite frankly, I don't, and I feel like it's okay to not have a high risk tolerance. And then secondarily to that, it's okay when you're not the smartest person in the room. In fact, your job should be to find people way smarter than you and put them in the same room as you. I know plenty business tycoons who have below average IQs. So if you're contemplating that, launching a business or scaling your business, I think that you should remember that there are a lot of people dumber than you. A lot of people have lower risk tolerances that have already gone further, and it's like, put yourself out there, and chances are you're going to be successful. It's perseverance, it's hard work. Those are the two things. It's just that relentless, perseverance, trying, keep on innovating, keep on trying, and then eventually you find product market fit. So that's the sort of message that I love to leave. And then I think the last part is like, if you're passionate towards something, community, the planet, products, I think that's a really good indication that you're on the right track. And I think, if you can intersect those things, you're going to find so much clarity and so much focus and meaning in your life as well.